Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. Once again, we're going to have to change things up a little bit today. For some reason, the calls that I think I need to listen to in order to keep us up and running and fully informed always seem to hit on Wednesdays. I've got a call that I need to be on at 12:15. Thank God it wasn't at noon, but it was at 12:15. This is a domestic call from Washington, D.C. Very briefly, I'm going to say this, and I don't want to sound mysterious about it, but we're living in very strange times. There are the things we are being told by the media. There are the things that we see and hear with our own eyes and ears which refute what we're being told by the media. And then there's a whole lot of things that we are not privy to. I'm hoping this phone call is going to clarify a few things for me with regard to those things that we're not privy to. I'm from the D.C. area. A lot of the guys in D.C. that I deal with, some are in politics, most are working as lobbyists. I'm not a government guy, so we've been able to maintain our friendship over the years. But there's a lot of panic in D.C. right now on just about every side. And what happens in D.C. could have an indirect effect on the subject matter at hand for us, which is what's going on in Iraq today. So I'm going to have to bug out on that call, but I do have a few minutes to talk a little bit about the situation in Iraq. I'm going to suggest, however, that everyone listening to this call for the first time, and it'll be over in a few minutes, go to our call of February 10th. It reviews a lot of the important information in Iraq. It'll give you information about the program we've put in place to assist you. As a result of that call, frankly, we've been inundated with calls. I've been on the phone nonstop. Those of you that have contacted me by phone or email, you will be hearing from me later today and throughout the rest of the week. But I've just been jammed up, and I've got to squeeze this one call in because I really think it's important. But I want to briefly go over the situation in Iraq right now. There's basically two areas that I'm concerned with. One is the passage of the budget, and second is the CBI operations. Very quickly with the budget, it looks as though they're going to be voting next week on the budget. There still are disputes with regard to the budget. There are disputes regarding revenue sharing, disputes regarding the exchange rate for the dinar against the dollar, and disputes regarding the process for the privatization of their economy and converting state assets to private assets. There's also a little bit more of a complication because China, which seems to be a global problem, I don't know why the international community doesn't stop China because they're just making a mess of everything. They're very interested, of course, in an oil deal with Iraq, and they're very interested in providing loans to Iraq in exchange for the guarantee that Iraq will be part and parcel of their Silk Road Initiative. And their Silk Road Initiative basically is nothing more than them trying to get hegemony over global trade. And it's really difficult to watch this because the absolute worst possible administration that we could have is one we have right now that's basically laying down for China. Biden recently said that he's on the phone with Xi for 25 hours. Well, I can guarantee you it wasn't Biden explaining to Xi what he could and couldn't do. It was the reverse. It was Xi telling Biden what he was going to do, and I'm sure Biden nodding in agreement. But that's don't even get me started there. Getting back to the budget, first with regard to the revenue sharing, that's primarily got to do with the respective distribution of profits from the revenue from the sale of oil. And, of course, the Kurds want a substantial amount of that, and That's fair given that much of the oil comes from their region. Second has to do with the exchange rate. We're looking at a budget of the exchange rate roughly 1,450 dinar per dollar. And it's very confusing how this is supposed to work. Basically, what the government's doing is this is what our government does. It's smoke and mirrors. The theory is that by reducing the value of the dinar against the dollar, they'll be able to collect more of the dinar, and they can use that larger number of dinar to show a reduction in their deficit. But that's not real, because the end result of that is that the cost of goods and services has gone up for the average citizen of Iraq. And this is the game that the central banks play. Inflation is not the increased value of goods and services. Inflation is the reduced purchasing value or purchase price for their currency. So it costs more dollars to purchase the same items. So on paper, the reduction in the value of the dinar against the dollar can reflect a reduction in their deficit. But the trade-off for that, unfortunately, is the increased price of goods and services. But there is a silver thread in all of this, and it's this. The disputes that they are having for the budget are resulting in postponement of the passage of the budget. And with the postponement of the budget, it gives the CBI more time to complete its work for the reinstitution of the dinar. Now, if the budget passes at a value of $14.50, even if the government starts making expenditures at that price, they can still reinstitute. It's just going to be more difficult. Or the budget could pass, and they could still withhold expenditures at the $14.50 rate and wait for the reinstitution. But the postponement of the budget, if they're going to have the dinar at a rate of $14.50 against the dollar, is for the wrong reason. It's a good thing from our perspective. Now, what's the CBI doing in terms of the currency reforms? Well, they're pursuing the implementation of the provisions of the white paper. And this is very, very important for the World Bank and the IMF and the BIS and all of the international agencies. And this is what they want to see, progress with regard to the white paper. Now, what we're looking at in Iraq over the next 3 years is substantial economic growth, meaning that they're not going to have to import a lot of items, particularly the refinement of their own petroleum. They're going to be able to do that themselves. They're going to institute the education program. They're going to complete the project to delete the zeros, stop the auctions permanently, and make serious inroads into stopping all of the corruption, much of which happens from skimming from the auctions. That has to do not only with the Iranians, but with the corrupt officials within Iraq. So all of those things are very, very good in terms of the provisions within the white paper. So I'm looking at still cautiously optimistic for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in the first quarter, irrespective of what happens with the budget. That seems to be where we are at present. But Iraq has always been a fluid situation. We're going to have to watch it on a daily basis. This is the information that I wanted to provide for today. And again, we're still on target right now for the reinstitution of the dinar before the end of the first quarter. And from our perspective, this is the most important thing. I apologize for having to cut the call short to get to the D.C. call, but as I say, I'm fortunate enough to be on the fringes of some of these influential calls, and when I have an opportunity to, and I want to say participate, but I won't be speaking. I'm quite sure I'll be muted. But none of these calls are recorded, so I lose the information if I don't get into the call. I've got a few minutes before I do have to get into that call. So again, for those of you calling in for the first time, I strongly suggest you go to our call of February 10th. You can get that call by going to YouTube and then going to Trusts Unlimited, or IQD calls and going to Trusts Unlimited. That call has a lot of course, it has the program we put in place to assist you, but it has a nice Q&A on there as well. So again, I apologize for the shortness of this call, but I hope you understand, particularly those of you that have listened for some length of time, that this happens from time to time. But and I don't know, I guess Wednesday's the witching day or something, but it always seems that whether it's testimony that's being televised at Congress, or there's a call from Brussels, or there's something going on in the United States, it seems that midday Wednesday is when this occurs, and so I'm going to have to get into that call. So thanks for listening. Have a great week, everyone. Certainly if something of a dramatic nature were to happen, we're going to try to get out before next Wednesday. We'll try to get out an emergency email and set up an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great week.